Simon Says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
We're going to be exploring some really cool stuff in PowerPoint so we can really start to supercharge our skills when it comes to just putting together really engaging slide decks. And I think when it comes to PowerPoint, there are really two main aspects. You've got the content and then you've got the design, and both are equally as important. We need to ensure the content is readable, easy to interpret, but also we don't really want a death by PowerPoint situation where people are literally falling asleep because your slides are poorly designed, boring, contain too much text, and are just quite uninteresting. So we're going to take a look at some tips today that are going to liven up your presentations and just give them a little bit of pizzazz. My name's Deborah Ashby. I'm a Microsoft instructor, and as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm from London in the UK. I've been training for a really, really long time, about 25 years in the IT industry and about 17 years now in IT training. So I've been using PowerPoint for many, many years. I've sat through many, many presentations. So hopefully I'm well positioned to give you some tips. And we're going to be starting from a blank PowerPoint presentation. So there isn't a practice file that you need to download as there normally is with Excel. If you want to follow along with me, just fire up PowerPoint because we're just going to create a blank presentation from scratch. So really nice and simple. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about slide layouts at the beginning, just very briefly, because I think most people are reasonably aware as to how those work. I am going to introduce you to some free resources. So these are resources that I love to use when I'm putting together my PowerPoint presentations for things like free images, royalty-free images that you can use in business or personal presentations, anything like that. So we'll go through some free resources. And then we'll start to build a presentation. And as we're building this presentation, we're going to learn more hacks along the way. So we're going to start out by creating an engaging title slide. I'm going to show you how you can work effectively with background images, resizing them correctly so they don't appear distorted. We're going to talk about formatting and also aligning text boxes and various other items on your slides accurately. We're going to speak about the selection pane, something which I use all the time and I find so useful. And we're going to talk about gradient overlays. And if you don't know what that is, then that's pretty fun. So that will be something nice to look forward to. We're going to create an About Us slide. We're going to take a look at the eyedropper tool. We're going to speak about aligning objects and using the crop and fill utility. We're going to take a look at Morph. Now, this is a transition that's extremely popular at the moment, and it really does liven up your slides. It makes your slides look more like almost like an animated video presentation as opposed to an actual slide deck. So Morph is really cool. So we'll take a look at how that works. We're going to create a divider slide where we're going to explore how you can do things like merge shapes together, merge images across shapes, and also just some fun stuff when it comes to creating really nice, effective slides with some cool text effects. A couple of really practical things which you could use in a business context, so things like creating a timeline and an organization chart. I'm going to show you a little trick for converting things to SmartArt really quickly. We're going to show you how to format the timeline and also some really cool tricks when it comes to working with the icons that are available within PowerPoint as well. Once you fire up your PowerPoint presentation, in general, you're always going to see these placeholders on the slide. So you can see here it says click to add a title, click to add a subtitle. Now, these can be useful. You can just click in here and start adding your text in. But in general, if you want to start from a blank slide, which I will say that most of the time I do, you can just change the layout. So on the Home tab, go to Layout, and then we can choose the blank layout just to get rid of those placeholders. So now we're starting from a nice clean slate. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to build a really nice, attractive looking title slide for our presentation. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an image, and we're going to use an image that fills the entire background of the slide. And as we do this, I'm going to show you a couple of issues that you might come across and how I've seen people try and fix it. And this is my first recommendation for a free resource if you're looking for images to use in your presentations. The first website I always use for images is pexels.com. But this is an amazing website full of free resources. So not only does it have free photos, it also has things like free videos if you want to use those in your presentations. So if I was to type in, let's just type in something like mountains, it's very simple. You just type in your keyword and you have access to all of these really high quality images that you can use freely in your PowerPoint presentations. Also note here, if you're looking for videos to use in your PowerPoint presentations, you have a videos link just here. And this will give you some very short looping videos, which can look really nice in the background of your slides. So if you want to choose a picture, you can just simply click on it and you have the free download button in the top right-hand corner. So Pexels is an amazing resource for images for your PowerPoint presentations. Another website that's really similar is this one just here. So this is unsplash.com. This is pretty much the same as Pexels. It has the same sort of search bar here. You just type in what you want to search for, and it's going to bring up images and videos that you can download. Now, I tend to always gravitate towards Pexels. I don't know why. If you want to follow along with me, we're going to grab our first image from here. So if you type in team into the search bar, it's going to pull up some businessy like pictures. Now, I don't mind which one you use. You don't have to use exactly the same one that I've used. But if you can just download one of these, we're going to use that in the first slide of our presentation. So click on any image, download it to your PC, and then we're going to go in and pick it up. We're going to insert the image now into our PowerPoint slide. So we're going to jump up to the insert ribbon. In the images group, we can go to pictures. We have a few different choices in here. We could choose an online picture, a stock image, or we can go to this device. So we want to go to this device because hopefully we all have our pictures downloaded to our downloads folder. Let's grab our image and insert it. And this is where you will come across your first issue when it comes to filling the background of a slide with an image. Notice that when the image inserts into the slide, we get these two white spaces down the outside. So we have this sort of white space. Now, in general, what I see people do to fill this white space is that they'll grab the resize handles and they'll start dragging this image out to resize it so it exactly fits. Now, it doesn't look too bad with the image that I have, but it is slightly distorted. And with some images, it can look really, really terrible. So we don't want to be doing that. So let's Control Z to undo and put it back to how it was, because this is how you should be resizing images so that they fill the background of the slide. We should be using crop and fill. So make sure you're clicked on your picture. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so my slide isn't as big. On the Picture Format tab, in the Size group at the end, we want to click the lower half of the crop button, and then we want to choose Fill. Now, when we choose Fill, we get these little black handles around the outside of the image. So what we can now do is grab those handles and drag them out to fill the white space. So we're sort of marking where we want this image to stretch out to. Once we've done that, we go back to our lower half of our crop button and choose Fill again. And what it does is it effectively zooms into the image as opposed to stretching it out. So the aspect ratio is kept in a good format. It doesn't look distorted, and we can then move the image around to get it looking exactly as we want it to look. So I think about there is going to be perfect. And now we just need to click the top half of the crop button to perfectly crop that image to the background. That is a much better way of filling a background of a slide with an image. We're going to place some title text over the top because remember, this is our title slide. And again, we're going to come up with another little issue. So let's jump up to the Insert tab. We're going to go over to text and we're going to insert a text box. So we're going to draw a text box. And I'm just going to type the name of my company. We're going to pretend my company is called Stick Social. Now, in general, when I'm aligning things like titles, I like to sort of drag the placeholder so that it is the full width of the slide, because then when I click the center alignment button in the paragraph group on the home ribbon, I know that that is exactly in the center. I can then start to apply some formatting to this title. So I think I'm going to change the font and I'm going to use one of my favorite fonts, Lato Black. And I'm going to make this title a lot bigger than it currently is. So let's take this up to, I think 66 is about right. And I'm also going to change the font color to white. So we have our title. I'm going to add a subheading underneath as well. Now you could go in and add another text box. A lot of the time, I just like to duplicate text that's already on the screen. I find that a little bit quicker. So if you want to duplicate a text box, make sure you have it selected and press Control D. That's going to give you an exact duplicate. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm going to modify the text. So the subheading, let's say Be Simple, Be Social, something like that. And I'm going to take the font size down. We don't want this as big as the actual heading. And I think that looks pretty good. So drag that up very slightly. Now, if I want to align all of these, both of these text boxes to the dead center of the slide, what I'm going to need to do is group these two text boxes together. So once again, I'm going to select the heading, hold down the Shift key and select the subheading. And then the shortcut key to group things together is Control G. That's now one object, and it's going to make it a lot easier for us to align it to the center of the slide. Because what we can then do is use our alignment tools, and you'll find them on numerous different ribbons. We have them on the Home ribbon under the Arrange group, or we have them on the Shape Format ribbon in the Arrange group over here. So when we click Align, we can choose to align to the middle, and we can align to the center to make sure that that is dead in the center of the slide. So just a couple of little tricks just there. But the problem that you have sometimes, particularly if you have an image in the background that has lots of colors in it, or it's quite a busy image, is that the text that you put over the top can get a little bit lost in the image. And this text, it doesn't look too bad, but it doesn't really pop out from the slide. So what I like to do is I like to add what I call a gradient overlay over the top. So for something like this, what I would do here is I would jump up to Insert, I would grab the rectangle tool from the Shapes gallery, and then I would draw a big old rectangle all the way over the top. So it covers the entire image. Now, once I have this like that, I'm then going to format this shape. So let's right click and go into Format Shape. Now I'm going to expand Fill, and I'm actually going to leave it on a solid fill for the time being, and I'm going to change the color to, let's go for a darker gray, almost black color. And then I'm going to adjust the transparency slider. And you'll see as I do this, I can let more of the image show through or less of the image show through. So this is sort of pretty much personal preference, but it just means that the image isn't so bright. When we pull that text forward, it's really going to stand out. So I'm going to take mine down to, I think 26% is about right. Let's close the Format Shape pane. Now what I need to do is I need to bring that text forward, because currently we have this overlay, this transparent overlay over the top. And this moves me nicely into my next talking point, which is using the selection pane. And this is a little thing that I find people don't generally tend to know that much about, but it's something that I use all the time. So what we can do is if we go to or click somewhere on the slide, go up to Shape Format, and in the Arrange group, we have a selection pane option. Now, if you've never used the selection pane before, the selection pane basically controls what we call the Z order in PowerPoint. So you need to think of your PowerPoint slide as if it's in layers. And if you've ever used an application like Photoshop, you might be familiar with that concept of layers. So objects are stacked on top of each other in PowerPoint. And you can see in the selection pane exactly how those objects are stacked. Now, currently, you can see it says Rectangle 8, Group 7, Text Box 6, so on and so forth. Now, if you have lots of objects on your slide, this can get a little bit confusing, because by default, PowerPoint's just going to name these objects as it likes. So it will call rectangles rectangle 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So what I like to do in here is I always go in and rename these objects so I know which ones I'm selecting. For example, If I select picture 4, I know that that is the background picture. So I'm going to double click and rename this to Team Photo to make it easy to identify. I have a little group here. This is the group that contains my text. If you remember, we grouped the heading and the subheading. So I'm going to rename where it says group 7. I'm just going to say that this is my text, and text box 6, that is the subheading, and text box 5 is the main heading. And then the rectangle, that is my overlay. So I'm just going to rename that. So now that I've renamed these items, it's a lot easier to know which ones we're selecting, because that's what you can do in this selection pane. We can click on items to select them on the slide, or we can do things like hide them. So if I click on this little eyeball icon next to any of these, it will hide certain things on the slide. Now, this can be useful if you're trying to maybe get to the picture, which is sitting at the back. You could hide everything above it so that you can actually get to the picture and work on the picture. So hiding and unhiding is really important. We can also use this to reorder our layers. So currently the team photo is the bottom layer. We then have the text in the middle and then the overlay over the top. And what I want is for the text to be at the front. So I'm going to grab text in the selection pane and I'm simply going to drag it up and place it above overlay, and that's going to bring that text to the front on the slide. So a really great way of changing the Z order, the layer order of items in our PowerPoint presentation can be super helpful, particularly if you have lots going on a slide. I want to talk a little bit more about background fills and gradient overlays, because this is going to lead me into showing you another really cool resource when you're putting together your PowerPoint presentations. So let's click on our gradient overlay, our little transparent background. Once again, we're going to right click and we're going to go into Format Shape. And this time, instead of having a solid fill, I want to do a gradient fill instead. Now, if we select gradient fill, you can see what it does. It's going to fill it with the default gradient. Now, the way that gradients work are we have what we call gradient stops underneath. So I have 4 gradient stops in this presentation. And we can change the color of each of these gradient stops to kind of customize the blend of colors that we're using in this gradient. Now, a website that I love to use when I'm trying to do something like this, when I want to do a gradient background, is this website just here. And this is an amazing website if you want to find colors that work really well together. So this doesn't just work for gradients, it works for anything else that you're trying to design in PowerPoint. You can explore color palettes that work really well together. You can explore gradients that work really well together. So if we want to grab a gradient, if we go up to Tools, you can see here, Browse Gradients. Let's click it. And it takes us into a whole list of different colors that work really well as gradients. And notice as I hover over, it shows you the hexadecimal code of those colors, which we can then copy and paste into PowerPoint. So if we scroll down, I think I'm going to use this one just here. So what I could do is I can hover over. All we need to do to copy this code is click. It copies it to the clipboard, and then we just need to go back to PowerPoint, and we can now add it as one of our gradient stops. Now, I only want to have 2 color gradients in this particular presentation, so I'm going to remove 2 of these gradient markers, and I'm just dragging them off that gradient stops bar. I'm now going to click on this first gradient just here, and when it comes to the color, if we jump into more colors, this is where we can paste in our gradient code, Control V. Click on OK, and it's going to add that to my gradient. I can then go back to the website and pick up the other color. So we want this lighter sort of beigey orange color. Click to copy to the clipboard, jump back to PowerPoint. We're going to select the other gradient stop and do the same thing. More colors, and then Control V to paste that in. We can now adjust our gradient stops by sliding them up and down to get the exact blend that we want. So if we want more purple, we can drag that up, so on and so forth. Now, I want to also make this transparent because I still want that picture underneath to show through. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit until I get it into a position that I like. Now, I think I'm going to make the purple a little bit darker. So you can see that really nice effect that we're getting now. It's much more interesting than just having a solid fill background. And this website is so amazing if you want to find colors that work really well together. That is another little resource tip for you there. Let's move on now to creating our second slide. Now, the second slide that we're going to create is going to be an About Us slide or a Meet the Team kind of slide. Now, what we're going to do is ungroup the two headings that we have on the main slide. So to ungroup things, the keyboard shortcut is Control Shift G. You can also right click and you have an ungroup option in the menu as well. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to create a new slide in a moment and we're going to have a heading on that slide, but I want to make sure that the heading is using this same purple color that we have in this gradient. So if you have things like branded colors that you need to use for your company presentations, you want to make sure that when you're working with headings and things like that, everything looks consistent and is using those same colors. So what I'm going to do first of all here is I'm going to press Control D to duplicate that heading. And I'm going to change the color of this, and I'm going to make sure that I get this purple color just here. Now, this leads me on to my next little tip, which is using the eyedropper tool. Now, if you've never used this little tool before, it is absolutely amazing. I love this. It's so good if you're trying to create consistent look and feel across your slides. So with the text box selected, we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to Font and notice that we have eyedropper at the bottom here. Now, what the eyedropper does is notice that my cursor changes to a little, I think we used to call those pipettes back in the day. And as I drag my mouse around the slide, you can see it's picking up in that little preview square the colors that I'm hovering over. So this means that you can basically pick up colors from your presentation and change the font to that specific color. So if you're trying to work with colors within the presentation, this is perfect. So I'm going to use this dark purple. Let's click, and it's going to change the font to that specific color. So I really love this little tool for making consistent color schemes. So now that we have that, I'm going to insert a new slide. We're going to use blank again. And now I'm just going to cut and paste. Control X, Control V. I'm going to format this a little bit. I don't want this to be quite as big as the other one. So let's take this down to, I'm going to say 54. I'm going to change the title. Let's call this Meet Team and just move this into place. So on this second slide, what we're going to create is we're going to have a look at a few techniques here. We're going to take a look at shapes, alignment, we're going to fill some shapes, and so quite a bit going on here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 3 circles. So let's go to the Insert tab, into Shapes, and we're going to select the Oval tool. Now with shapes in PowerPoint, if I was to just draw this circle, you can see it kind of goes all over the place. And if you want a perfect circle, that can be quite hard to do if you use this method. So instead, what you want to be doing when you insert your shapes is holding down the Shift key when you drag, and that's going to give you a perfect circle. So I think I'm going to make mine about that big. Let's move it into place. And I want 3 of these. So again, I'm just going to duplicate the shape by pressing Control D, Control D. Now I'm just going to roughly move these into position because I want to get the alignment tools to take all the hard work out of aligning objects for me. So if I want to align these 3 circles with each other and also into the center of the slide, I simply need to select them. I can do that by holding down Shift and selecting all the circles. Alternatively, to make selections, you can simply draw a big rectangle around your shapes, and that's going to select them as well. So now I have them selected. Again, I can do this on the Home tab. We have an Arrange group just here, or we can use the Shape Format tab. We have alignment options just here. So I'm going to say align to the middle, And I'm also going to say distribute horizontally because that's going to give me equal distance between all of those circles. Then Control G, and I can align them as a group to the center of the slide. So I can then say align center and align middle. Once I've done that, Control Shift G to ungroup so I can work on them separately. Okay, so your alignment tools are really, really useful when it comes to aligning things on your slide. So now that we have these three circles, what I want to do is I want to fill these circles with images of the heads of departments. So again, I would recommend that I've got some images saved off, but if you want to quickly jump onto Pexels, or you can search for man, woman, business person, something like that. Filling shapes with images is something that I've seen people over the years do in very strange ways. And there is a very simple way to do this. Again, it's using crop and fill. So let's click on the first shape. We're going to right click and go to Format Shape. Now we want to fill our shape with a picture. Now with this, it's always going to fill it with the first texture in the list or the last picture that you used. So for me, it's filling it with the last texture. That's okay because we just want to go to Insert under Picture Source and then we can pick up the picture that we've saved off. So I have three pictures that I'm going to use here. Let's select Nathan first of all, click on Insert. Now, notice what happens. Again, we're having this issue with distortion. So this is where we can use crop and fill to fix this issue, much like we did on the first slide. So with the image selected, we're going to jump up to picture format, go into crop, and we're going to use that fill button again. As soon as we do that, the image is no longer distorted. We can drag him around. We can make him bigger if we want him to appear more zoomed in within the shape. And then we can reposition. Once we're happy with the position, we can click the top half of the crop button. Nice and simple. Let's fill the other two in exactly the same way. We're going to go to Picture. We're going to go to Insert. Let's pick up Christina. Again, she's completely distorted, so we need to go to Crop and Fill. And then we can reposition her and click the top half of the crop button. And the final one, practice makes perfect is what I say. Let's click on Insert and we're going to pick up Hillary. And once again, we need to do crop and fill. And then we can move her and click the top half of the crop button. So really simple to get nicely sized images inside shapes. So now we have our images, let's add some text boxes because we're going to talk a little bit more about alignment because aligning things on your slide makes the difference. It can take your presentation from looking really professional to just looking a complete mess if you don't have things aligned correctly. So on the Insert tab, let's add a text box and I'm just going to add his name at the bottom. So let's say Nathan Jones. I'm going to drag that in. And again, if I wanted to make these the same color, again, I could use my eyedropper tool. So with the text box selected, I can go to Font, Eyedropper, and I could pick up the color from there. Okay, so that eyedropper is really a godsend. Now, notice here, when I hover or move the text box around, can you see those red guidelines that are coming up? Those are called smart guides, and they can be super helpful when you're trying to arrange things on your slide. Now, if you don't see them, you're going to need to turn your smart guides on. You do that by right-clicking on the background of the slide, going down to Grids and Guides, and then you want to make sure you have a tick next to Smart Guides just there. And that means when you start moving anything around on your slide, it's going to try and work out what you're trying to align it with. So for me, when I move this around, it's telling me that that is the dead center of the picture, which is perfect. So I can then let go. I'm going to duplicate, Control D, drag it over. And again, you can see as I move this, I'm getting those smart guides come up. So now I can see it's in the middle of the picture and it's also aligned with the Nathan Jones text box. I just need to change it to her name. And again, let's duplicate and we can move this around until we get it in the position that we want. And I will say this isn't an exact science. Sometimes you don't get the guidelines come up, but in general, this works really well. So let's change the name here, Hillary Roy. And again, this does depend on how long the name is as well. So sometimes you might have to rejig it around to get it in exactly the correct position. So grids and guidelines, recommend you turn those on when you're working in PowerPoint. Now, the morph transition it's kind of like animation, but it's not classed as animation, it's classed as a transition instead. And Morph really does add a really nice, smooth, slick effect to your slide. I'm going to show you one example in the business context of how you might want to use it so you can see how it works. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate the slide. So Control D to duplicate. And what I'm going to do is on this second slide, I'm going to make some changes. So maybe on this second slide, I want to make Nathan a lot bigger. So let's hold down Shift, drag the resize handle, and just make him a lot bigger. And I'm going to make the other two a lot smaller. So hold down Shift as you drag, and I'm going to take it down to about there. Hold down Shift and drag, and I'm going to take it to there. And I'm going to put these two down in the corner. I'm going to delete out their little text boxes because this slide is where we focus on Nathan. So we're going to make him the star of the show. Let's increase the font size here. I'm going to take that up to 44, drag it out. And maybe on this slide, we have a little bit of information about Nathan, what he does, how he can help you, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to insert a text box that has some dummy text in it. Again, this is quite a useful little tip. If you have to plan slides out and you want to maybe see what text looks like in different layouts and you don't want to actually type in any meaningful text, you can simply type this little bit of code, rand, open bracket, and then the number of paragraphs that you want and the number of lines, close the bracket, and it will generate some sample text for you. So you can see I have 2 paragraphs of 3 lines. So let's pretend that this is kind of a bit of information about Nathan. I'm going to duplicate the slide again, Control D. And we're going to do the same for the other 2 people. So this time we're going to hold down Shift. We're going to take Nathan down so he's smaller. Now notice as I drag, can you see those red smart guides again? It's telling me that I've dragged him to the same size as the other 2 images on the slide. So that is another really useful little feature. This time we're going to replace him with Christine, and let's make her large. Drag her out like that, move her there, and then I'll just change her name. And let's do the final slide, and then we can watch the magic happen. Let's do Control D to duplicate. This time we're going to minimize Christine all the way down, and we're going to drag this one up here. And I'm being very rough with these sizes, so they're probably not exactly accurate. I'm sure you can make yours a little bit more accurate than I'm making them here. I think Christine needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Drag her down here, and then we can replace the text. So now we have these 4 slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all by holding down the Shift key. So I'm not selecting the first slide, I'm only selecting slides 2 to 5, and then we're going to apply the Morph transition. So up to transitions, Morph is the first one. Let's click it, and just so you can see how this works, let's run the slideshow. Now we're going to start from the beginning. So there is our first slide, looking very fancy and nice. We're going to move on to the next slide, but check out what happens just here. When I move on, we get this really nice morph transition. If we move to the next slide, you can see how that looks. So it looks a lot less like you're moving between different slides and having that death by PowerPoint feel. It looks much more like a smooth, slick, animated transition. There are so many different ways that you can use Morph to get some really, really cool effects. The important point with Morph is that you have a starting slide and you need to duplicate the slide each time, okay? And then apply the transition. This time I'm going to create 2 versions of this slide so you can see 2 different techniques. And what I'm going to create is a divider slide. So it might be that you have a lot of slides in your presentation and you want to maybe just have divider slides. So maybe you want to speak a little bit about the team before you actually go into the slide deck, and you just want a slide up that's sort of like a placeholder. We might call that a placeholder slide or a divider slide. So I'm going to insert a brand new slide. Let's do a blank in here, because the technique that I want to demonstrate here is how to use the merge shapes option. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert some shapes. So let's go to our shapes gallery, and you can use this technique on any of these shapes. I'm going to use, where is it? This one here, the parallelogram. And let's draw it over here. And we're going to draw it so it looks something like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this twice. Control D, Control D. I'm just going to move these into place so we have this kind of effect. So I have three shapes just here, and what I'm trying to do here is I want to have an image that kind of spans across all of these shapes. So what you might think is you can select them all by holding down Shift, right click, go into Format Object, and you might think that you can go to Picture or Texture Fill and insert your picture from your source. So for this, I'm just going to use the same picture that we used on the title slide. But what you'll find is that you, not only is it completely distorted, but you get the image 3 times in each of the shapes. Now that's not the effect that I'm going for. I want it to span all of the shapes. So what we need to do here is, with these selected, we need to go up to Shape Format, and we have a Merge Shapes drop down over here. So for this, we can use Union, and check it out, we get what we're looking for. Now it is still a little bit distorted, so again, we need to use our crop and fill technique. I use this little technique so much when I'm working with images. So if we go to crop and fill, you can see it puts it back to normal. We can adjust it, so we can select how much of this image we want to show. I think that looks pretty good. Click the top half of the crop button. Now notice that I have some outlines around this shape, so I don't want that. So let's go to Shape Outline and say No Outline. So this is a really nice technique that you might have seen in PowerPoint presentations before. You might have circles that you merge a shape across. You might have octagons. That's quite a popular one. A kind of octagon tiling effect with an image that's merged across them all to give a really nice look and feel. So now that I have that, that's the start of my divider slide. I'm going to just copy, Control C, this heading, and we're just going to put it over here. Drag it down, and there we go. We have a nice divider slide. I'm going to do another version of this divider slide to show you a completely different technique. So let's insert another blank slide. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to grab the gradient background from the title slide. So Control C, and I'm just going to paste it over here. So it's definitely the quickest way to do this. Now this is a really cool little text effect that you might want to employ to really give your presentations a modern look and feel. So what I'm going to do is let's grab the Meet the Team text again. We'll use this. Control C, Control V. Now I'm going to make a couple of changes. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take this up to, let's make this quite large. I'm going to make it 80. Let's drag it out and kind of position that around there. Now there's a bit of a process to this, so bear with me. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate the text that you can see, Control D, and I'm going to drag it just above. Now I'm going to remove the fill from this text so that we just have the outline around the outside. So let's go to the Shape Format tab, and I'm going to go to Text Fill, and I'm going to say No Fill, but I do want a white outline. And then I'm going to drag this back over the top of the other text. Now you might be thinking, what on earth is she doing? It will become clear in a moment, I promise you. So currently, if we open up the selection pane, you can see what I have. So we have our overlay, which is our colored background. I have the main heading, and they both say main heading. So it's really hard for me to see which one I'm actually selecting. So if I click the eyeball to hide one of them, I can see that this one is the actual outline. So I'm going to rename this outline so I can identify it a lot easier. And this one we'll say main. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another image, but we're going to remove the background from this image. So you get to see another little technique. So let's jump up to Insert, into Pictures, and this device. And again, I'm going to use this image. I would say if you want to remove the background from an image in PowerPoint, try and choose an image that has a fairly plain background. PowerPoint definitely isn't Photoshop, but we can do some basic edits. But I find that with an image that has a plainer background, you're going to get a better result with the Remove Background tool in PowerPoint. So if we want to use this image, but we don't want this white background around the outside, we can go up to the Picture Format tab and we can click on Remove background. Now you can see that PowerPoint does its best to try and do this. So everything that we can see here in pink is what's going to be removed. Now I can see that it hasn't quite got the selection right. So this is where I need to refine what we're selecting. So if you take a look up on the ribbons, you can see I can now mark areas to keep and areas to remove. So let's go for areas to keep first of all. I get a little pencil icon and I can now just kind of draw over where I want to keep parts of the image, and it will readjust the selection. And most of the time it's pretty good at this. So we're not going to spend too much time getting it perfect, but that looks pretty good. Oh yeah, I want to keep the top of her head as well. So let's make sure we keep that. I can see we have some areas to remove. So let's click mark areas to remove. And I'm just going to remove this grey background at the bottom. I think that's good enough for what we're trying to do here. Let's click on keep changes. And we've now done a pretty decent job at removing that background. Now, the effect that I want here is I want her to kind of look like she is behind the outline of this. So it sort of looks like she's moving behind this text. Now this can all be done within the selection pane again. If we take a look where it has picture 5, I'm going to say that this is Sarah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the layer that Sarah's on between the outline and the main text. So let's drag down, and now we get this kind of effect. So when we move her along, can you see she's sort of in between? So if I place her like that, we get this really cool text effect. And this is something that you see a lot in modern presentations. So if you really kind of want to bring your presentations into the modern era, this is the type of thing that you want to be trying to achieve. And as you can see, it is really simple to do. The next thing I want to show you is a little bit more of a practical thing when it comes to getting information into slides. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the presentation. Let's create a new blank slide because I want to talk about inserting things like timelines and organization charts. So I'm going to copy this heading. Let's just put it over here. And the first one we're going to do is going to be a timeline. Now, timelines are often things that you see in PowerPoint presentations. It might be a company who lists out their timeline of, when they were founded, all of their accomplishments and their goals over the years. You might see various different kinds of timelines. Now, if you have to create a timeline, you could create it manually by using shapes and connectors, but that is quite a bit of hassle. Instead, what you could do is just type out what you want in a text box and then very quickly convert it to a timeline using Convert to Smart Art. So maybe you have your company's achievements listed out. It might be something completely different. The principle is the same. So if you have it in a text box, what you can do if you want to very quickly create a timeline is make sure you have the text box selected, and then up on the Home tab in the paragraph group, we have this button just here, Convert to Smart Art Graphic. If we click the drop down, we have some smart art that we can convert it to, or if we want to see the full list, we can go into more smart art graphics. But the one that we want is timeline. Here it is just here. Let's click it, and then we can resize it. And in one click, we've created ourselves quite a nice looking timeline. I say quite nice. I would probably then go in and start formatting this to make it look a little bit better than it currently does. Very nice and quick to create these timelines in this particular way. Now, of course, you can ungroup everything that you see on here, Control-Shift-G to ungroup. And then we can modify different parts. So if you want to change the color, you can do that. Go up to shape format, and we can make it a similar color to our theme. You can go in, modify the text, all of that kind of stuff. But that Convert to Smart Art button is the thing I want you to take away from this. Type it out in a text box, Convert to Smart Art, and you're done. I wanted to show you a little trick when it comes to using icons, because icons are a really important part of PowerPoint these days. We see icons in presentations all the time. Now, something that you might not know is that you can actually customize the icons that are available in PowerPoint. Let's jump up to the Insert ribbon. In the Illustrations group, let's click on Icons to open up the Icons gallery. Now in here, we have a selection of icons that we can use in our PowerPoint presentations, and I'm going to search for the word seed, for seed investment, let's say. And I think I'm going to use this icon just here. Let's insert it. Now, most people are reasonably familiar with these icons. If I make this a little bit bigger, you can change the color of these. You can go up to graphics format. You can change them to a different fill color. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually change the color of different parts of this icon. So if I want the actual seed and the leaves to be a different color from the soil, I can do that. And a lot of people don't know that you can do this simply by ungrouping the icon. So again, you can press Ctrl Shift G. Alternatively, you can right click, go to Group and choose Ungroup. Now it's going to ask you if you want to convert it to a drawing object. We'll say yes, but that effectively ungroups it and we can now select different parts of the icon. So if I want the seed or the soil to be a different color from the seed, I can select it and then I can go to Shape Format and maybe I want to fill it with something that looks more like soil, like so. You could then group these back together again. So Control G to group, and then you can move these to wherever you want them to be. So you can customize the icons that you have in PowerPoint. Another little tip that not a lot of people know about. Now, along a similar principle, I'm just going to duplicate this entire slide. I'm going to select everything by drawing a box around it and delete. We can create an organization chart in a very similar way to what we did with the timeline. So if you need to create a very quick organization chart, you can insert a text box and type out the hierarchy. So maybe you have your CEO at the top, and then underneath the CEO, we need to make sure that we press the tab key to indent so PowerPoint knows the structure. Maybe we have the sales manager. Then underneath the sales manager, we have sales agent 1, and maybe we have sales agent 2. And then maybe we have marketing manager, who's on the same level as the sales manager. And then we have marketing assistant 1. You could carry on going. So what you can then do is select the text box. And once again, if you go to Convert to Smart Art, you can insert an organization chart really, really quickly. Check it out. It's literally a one-click option. You can, of course, then go in, format these, make this look a lot nicer than I have. But just getting that general structure in, it's a lot easier just to type it out, making sure that you tab and indent for the various different levels of people, and then convert it to Smart Art. A really cool little option. But something that people always ask me is, say they have a company logo that they want to appear on every single slide. Do they have to copy and paste it onto every slide? No, you don't. You simply add it to the slide master. So let me show you how that works. If we go up to the View tab, into Master Views, we have Slide Master just here. And the Slide Master is basically a template that controls everything that you see in your slide layouts. So we have all of our different slide layouts down here. And all I need to do, if I want to add a logo to the bottom corner, I just need to add it to the Slide Master. So what I can do is go to Insert, go into Pictures, and again, I have a little logo saved off, so we'll just use that as the example. And I'm just going to make this a bit smaller just so you get the idea. And then I can place this wherever I like. Maybe I want it down here or on this side. Let's put it down there. And then when we close the slide master, you can see that it's now going to appear on every slide in the presentation. So you're not going to have to copy and paste things across. If you want specific pieces of text to appear on every slide, you could also add those to the slide master, or maybe a header or a footer or things like that. So the slide master, it is a huge topic. It can get a bit more complicated than that, but that is the sort of general premise of why you might use it. You can see here the presentation that we're building, we've used a lot of imagery. And you might find that if you're creating a really nice presentation, you're probably going to use a lot of pictures. Now, what can tend to happen is your PowerPoint presentation can start to get very large in file size, and it can get slow, it can be quite laggy. So we want to try and minimize the file size as much as possible. So if you do have a presentation that has a lot of pictures, what I would recommend you do is you go onto a slide that contains any picture, click on it, go to picture format, and then in the adjust group, we have a compress pictures option. So if we click on this, we can choose if we want to just compress this picture that we've selected. In general, I will always compress every picture in my presentation. So I deselect this so it compresses everything. It will also delete cropped areas of the picture. So when we crop pictures, we leave a lot of the picture around the outside. So we want to remove that. Click on OK, and that's really going to help with the size of your file, and it's going to help your presentation run a little bit better. So you might have seen this. I mean, I think most of us are familiar these days with QR codes, but did you know that you can add them into PowerPoint? So think of it this way. If you're giving a presentation to an audience and you want to direct them to maybe your website or maybe your YouTube channel or something else, you could type it out on the screen and they could take a picture of it, or you could add a QR code that links them directly to it. Now, if you've never used this before, it is a little add-in in PowerPoint. Let me just delete out the organization chart, if it's going to let me. There we go. And if we go to the insert ribbon into add-ins, if you don't have it, you're going to need to go to get add-ins. And it's really simple to search for. If you just type in QR, you're looking for this one just here, QR for Office. So if you click on add, it's going to add that little add-in in, and this is where you can customize where you want this QR code to go to. So I'm just going to use Google as an example. So let's just type in www.google.com. You can put in whatever you like. You can change the color of the QR code. You can really customize it. And then if you click on insert, it's going to generate a QR code which you can put onto your slide so that people can very quickly connect with you and jump to whichever website you're directing them to. So QR code, a really nice little add-in for PowerPoint. A big congratulations, everyone, for making it all the way to the end of this course. So it's just about time for me to sign off and say goodbye to you all. I hope you enjoyed running through this course as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you. Once again, my name is Deb. Bye for now.
Hi, from everyone at Simon Says It. We hope you're enjoying this training lesson. Please like this video to show your support for the channel. If you want to take your learning further, earn a certificate for this course, and gain access to over 200 courses ad-free, click up there and go to simonsaysit.com. Thanks for watching, and back to the course.
So I thought it'd be quite a nice idea just to combine some of my favorite efficiency hacks so that you can start maximizing your productivity and saving yourself some time. My name is Deborah Ashby, and I'm a Microsoft IT trainer. I've been a trainer for about 16 years now, and I've worked in the wider IT industry for about 27 years. So I've pretty much seen Excel evolve from a fairly basic application in the 1990s to the very complex product that it is today. Some of these tips you might already know. I'm hoping that there's enough in here that you will find at least something, or maybe even a few things that you didn't know before that's going to be really useful to you. So we're going to start out with some basic work with columns and rows. So doing things like quickly resizing columns and rows, quickly inserting multiple columns and rows, things like that. We're going to talk a lot about fill series and flash fill. Flash fill is what I like to call the superhero of Excel. It is such a good thing. And if you never used it before, then this is going to be a complete game changer for you. It's probably my favorite efficiency tip. So we're going to take a look at flash fill. I'm also going to show you some things that you can do with fill series. We're going to take a look at Alt keyboard shortcuts. If you're not sure what those are, you'll see when we get to them. I'm going to show you some tricks when it comes to quickly summing things, particularly when you're summing totals across different worksheets. And we're going to talk about the brilliance of Excel tables. Again, another one of my favorite things in Excel. I'm going to show you a couple of things when it comes to customizing your quick access toolbar to make your commands really easy to find. So I'm going to show you how you can basically use Excel to create folders and subfolders in File Explorer. It's a really cool little trick, so I'm looking forward to showing you that one. As I said, inserting multiple columns and rows. I'm going to show you the quick analysis tool in Excel if you want to create very quickly things like charts and tables, things like that. I'm going to show you a little trick for inserting blank rows between list items if you ever need to do that. And we're going to take a look at a few little data cleaning things as well. So I'm going to show you how you can very efficiently remove blank rows from a data set, how you can do things like fill blank cells, and also change the case quickly and remove leading and trailing spaces. We'll take a look at how we can quickly remove line breaks and non-printing characters from a data set, and also how we can create in-cell charts. I'm going to show you how you can analyze trends with spark lines I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a little hack with the status bar, and we're also going to finish up by talking about merging cells, because merging cells is something that you should never do in Excel. And I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to show you an alternative. So these are all of the things which I plan to show you. As I said, there's quite a lot in here. We are going to be jumping around a little bit all over the place. So let's come out of here and we can get going. Now, this might be a tip that you're already familiar with, but there are so many people who I come across who don't know that this exists. And what I see is if you have a data set like this, notice that this data set is a little bit of a mess. We have all of our rows are kind of bunched up. Some of them are kind of cutting off. And we also have our columns. So you can see here in these columns F, G, and H, I have these little hash symbols. It basically means the column's not wide enough for the data that I have in it. Now, what I see people doing, and this is very tedious, particularly if you have a large data set, is to resize all of these columns. They kind of grab the column and they drag it out, and they grab the next one and they drag it out. And if you've got a lot of columns, this can take a little bit of time. So there is a much easier way to do this. Now, if you have both columns and rows that you need to resize, all you need to do is select everything on the worksheet. And you can do that in a couple of ways. You can press Control A, or you can click in this little square in the corner where in between A and 1. If I click that, that's going to select everything in the worksheet as well. And then all you need to do to automatically resize all of the columns is simply hover your mouse over any of the dividers in between each column. So you can see my mouse has changed, or my cursor has changed to that little double-headed arrow. If I double click, it's going to automatically adjust all of those column widths to the widest item in that column. We can do exactly the same for rows. So if we hover our mouse over any of these row boundaries and double click the mouse, it's going to resize those rows. So much quicker than individually adjusting them. Now, just to note, that double click trick is basically just doing an auto fit. So another way that you could do this is if you have everything selected on the home ribbon, if you go into the format drop down, you could choose auto fit row height and auto fit column width. That will do exactly the same, but I generally tend to find that the double clicking is quicker. Let's move across to one of my favorite things, as I mentioned, Flash Fill. Now, if you haven't used Flash Fill, and I will say this isn't available in all versions of Excel, I think they introduced Flash Fill in Excel 2013. So if you have anything after that, then you should have Flash Fill. Now, why is Flash Fill so brilliant? Well, it takes all of the stress out of breaking up data across multiple columns. So let's take a look at the first example here. I have in column A just some full addresses. And you can see we have the street number, the street name, the state, and the zip code. And maybe my manager has asked me to break this full address up, because if we're going to analyze this data, having all of this data in one cell isn't so great if we want to analyze. So it's much better if we have each item in its own column. Now, if I have a very long list, I only have a short list here, but maybe I've got 20,000 rows of addresses, and I need to break each one up. To do this manually would take me forever. But fortunately, we have Flash Fill, which can help us do this. Now, the way that Flash Fill works is it recognizes patterns of data. So you basically need to tell Flash Fill what the pattern is, and then it can work out the rest. So you can see in the first row here, I've broken up this first address. So we have the street number, we have the street name, the state, and the zip code. So I've provided Excel with the first example, and then check out how quick this is. All we need to do is click in the first one, the street number, and press the keyboard shortcut Control E, and it's going to extract all of those street numbers. Move to the next one, Control E, move to the state, Control E, move to the zip code, Control E, and we are done. We can then use our little trick that we just learned. We can double click to make everything the correct width. How much quicker is that than having to mess around with text functions, left, right, things like that to extract text out of a cell? So Flash Fill, amazing for doing anything like that. We can also do it for if we want to do things like change case or just split up first names and last names. So if I wanted to maybe change the case of all of these, I could simply, again, just type in how I want it to look. So again, I'm providing Excel with the pattern. So maybe I want these to be in uppercase, and then I can simply either Control E, or alternatively, if you prefer to use Flash Fill from the ribbons, we can jump up to the Data tab and you'll find the Flash Fill button in the Data Tools group. It's this one just here. And you can click just to Flash Fill both of those down. So amazing at doing anything like that. Now, another way that you can use this is if maybe my boss says to me, okay, we have all of our employee names just here in column K, I want you to output their email addresses into here. So maybe everybody works for the same company and they have the same email format. So all I would need to do is, let's say that the email format is willard.scott@company.com. Let's just say that is the format. I can then use Flash Fill and it will do exactly the same for the rest of these names. Now I could use Control E, I could click on the button on the ribbon, but there is a third way that we can invoke Flash Fill. And that is we can simply go to the cell underneath and we can start to type the next one. And notice what happens. It goes sit down. And if this is what we want, we simply need to press Enter. If we decide we don't want to copy this down, we can press Escape. So if I press Enter, it now completely fills down all of those email addresses. So Flash Fill, one of my favorite things in Excel, and you can use it in so many more situations than I've shown you here. If you want to split up data, change the case. If you want to add things into data, you can use Flash Fill. Just provide the pattern, Control E, and you're done. Such an amazing little utility. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Alt keyboard shortcuts. Now, most people, when we think about working efficiently in Excel, we think a lot about using shortcuts instead of using our mouse to move around the screen. What do I mean by Alt keyboard shortcuts? Well, if you press the Alt key on your keyboard, notice what happens to my ribbons. Can you see that I now have those little key tips appearing underneath the ribbons and on various different commands? So we can now use these letters to move to the different ribbons and select things. So it means that we don't have to use our mouse at all, really. We can work predominantly with the keyboard. So for example, this data that I have on this worksheet is in an Excel table. Now, what about if I wanted to take this data out of this table? Well, I could use keyboard shortcuts in order to do that. I want to go to the table design ribbon. So notice that underneath table design at the top, we have JT underneath it. So if I press JT, it's going to jump me to that table design ribbon and give me a whole new set of shortcuts that I can use. Now, all I need to do is find the option that says convert to range. I can see it in the tools group just there. And if I press G, it's going to convert the table to a range. I can then hit enter to press yes, and I haven't had to touch my mouse once. So a lot of people really love these Alt keyboard shortcuts just to move between and select different options. If you have all these shortcuts up on the ribbon and you want to come out of this mode, just press escape and it will take you back to how it was. Let's move across to the auto sum worksheet. Now, again, this is a little tip that you might know, you might not. Some people sort of do this half right. Other people don't know about this at all. So this is a keyboard shortcut to just very quickly sum things on a worksheet. Now, it might be that you know what this keyboard shortcut is, but do you know that you can use it just to sum multiple items from multiple tables? We've got 4 different sales tables on here for sales team 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I need to basically fill in the totals for each of these. Instead of doing these all individually, what I can do is I can select the first table and I want to include that blank total column, hold down Control, select the second table, keep Control held down as I'm making these selections, and then I can just use the Auto Sum keyboard shortcut, which is Alt equals, and it's going to magically put those totals in for all of my selections. So you're not just limited to using it once, you can make your selection Alt equals and it will do them all in one go. Now this also works if you have your data split across different spreadsheets. So at the bottom here, I've got 4 spreadsheets and they're all colored in yellow: Sales Team 1, sales team 2, sales team 3, and sales team 4. And what I have on each of these, I've just separated out this data. So we have sales team 1 here, sales team 2, 3, and 4. So if I wanted to sum all of these across the different spreadsheets, all I need to do is select the spreadsheets first of all. So I'm clicked on sales team 1. If I hold down Shift and click Sales Team 4, it's going to select all of the worksheets in between. And then all I need to do is do it for one of these. So I can select and press Alt equals, and it's going to complete those totals across all of the different worksheets. So the key there is just to simply select the worksheets first, then do the Alt equals, and it will apply to everything. Now, just a side note, that works for formatting as well. So if you have the same data on different worksheets, maybe, or similar data, it's maybe displaying different values, but the same kind of structure like I have here, you could do that if you wanted to apply the same formatting across all of them. You could select all the worksheets, you could change the formatting, and it will change across all of them. So a really useful little trick to know. Let's move on to talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is Excel tables. So I'm working on the tables worksheet right now. Now, Excel tables, why are they one of my most favorite things? Well, they are so useful, particularly if you like everything in your worksheets to be dynamic. Now, what do I mean by that? When we talk about making things dynamic in Excel, it means that they're easy to update. We don't have to do a lot of fiddling around. We just need to add in our new data, and then whatever's hanging off of it, maybe a chart or something else, will automatically update. And tables are one of the best ways that you can make your data dynamic. Now, currently, I have this little data set here. Let's just say there's some sales agents, and these are their sales totals for Q1 to Q4. Now, currently, my data isn't in a table. So I'm going to show you an example of what happens when you don't put your data in a table, and then we'll take a look at the benefits of tables. Maybe I have this small data set and I want to create a little chart to represent these values. So I'm going to click in my data set. Let's jump up to the Insert tab. And in the charts group, I'm just going to enter a basic 2D column chart to represent this data. Now that's all well and good. I can see my agents running across the bottom. I can see the totals. We're looking good so far. But what about if we have another sales agent to add to the bottom of this list? So I'm going to use myself as an example. Let's add me to the bottom. And I've got my sales figures in here. Let's say I've done really well. But check out what's happening. The chart isn't updating, even though I've added a new piece of data. And we can see that if we click on the chart, notice that the range that the chart is using is actually highlighted in my data set. So you can see that it's not including anything that I'm going to add onto the bottom. But if I was adding agents in here, what I could do is I could drag the bottom of this down and it then includes it. But what about if I don't want to do that? Or maybe I don't realize that that's what I have to do. Well, a better way of doing this would be to put your data into a chart instead. So I'm just going to delete that out. Any data that you have, I would recommend that you put it in a table, particularly if you're going to analyze it. So a quick shortcut for putting data into a table is simply Control T. You can see it's picked up everything around where I'm clicked. Very important, if your table has headers, make sure you have this tick just here. Click on OK, and I get my data in a table. Now, remember, it's going to apply the default table style, the colors, for the theme that you're using. So if you don't like these, you can go to table styles and just change it to something a little less crazy. So I think I'm going to go for this turquoise color. Now, another thing I always recommend you do once you've put your data in a table is give your table a name, because by default, when you put data into an Excel table, Excel's going to give it a very generic name. So it's going to be table 1, table 2, table 3. So that makes your table quite hard to identify, particularly if you want to start using your table names in formulas and things like that. So if we take a look at the table design ribbon, we can actually see the table name in the first properties group just here. So table 1, the default name. I'm going to give this, let's just call this sales data. Now, one thing to note with your table names is that you can't have any spaces in the table name. So if you've got two words like I have here, you need to make them all one word, or maybe separate the words with something like an underscore. Let's press enter. Now I've named my table. Let's create our chart again and see what happens this time when we add something new. So I'm going to create the same chart, the 2D column chart, but now as soon as I start to type the next one, Notice it's already made room in the chart for the new data. And I can then add that in because charts are made to auto expand. So they will accommodate any new data that you add into the table. And this is great, not only for things like charts, it means you don't have to mess around adjusting those cell ranges, but also for formulas as well. So let me just show you what I mean by formulas. I'm going to delete out this chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these names over here. Let's Control C and just put them over here. And I didn't want to bring that formatting with me, but that's fine for the example that we're doing. I'm going to just copy and paste these. So essentially we have duplicate names in this list. I just really want to show you the benefits of putting this list into a table. Now I'm going to add here, let's say agent, and make it bold. Now, if I don't put this into a list and I create a formula based off of this list, so I'm going to use a unique formula, and this is one of the newer functions in Excel. It will basically output a unique list of values into your worksheet. Because these names are repeated in this agent column, if I just want a unique list of all of the sales agents, I can select the array, close the bracket, hit enter, and it's going to give me a unique list. Now, if I were to add more people onto the bottom here, because I've selected the cell range I4 to I17, it's not going to include them in my unique list. But if I put this into a table, it will include them. It helps you with your formulas as well. So let's do Control T. Yes, my table has headers. Now, if I was to do the unique function, and I can select all of the names in this list. Now, notice when we're using tables, we get the table references in the formula instead of cell references. So I have table 2, and it's telling me I'm using the agent column. Okay, now this is why it's quite important to name your tables, because I didn't name this little table just here, so we just have the generic name table 2. Now that might be fine, but sometimes it's a lot easier to identify them if you actually name them. I'm going to close the bracket, hit enter. It's going to give me the same thing, but if I add another person onto the bottom, that table is going to expand and my list is going to update. The benefits of putting things into tables is it just makes everything more dynamic and you can update things a lot more quickly. Let's move across to talking about the quick access toolbar. Now, again, this might be something that you're already aware of. I'm always surprised how many people don't know why this exists. But if you're not familiar with the quick access toolbar, it's basically this little thing that we have just here. So just above the formula bar and underneath the ribbons, you can see I have a few icons. I have the save, I have undo, and I have redo. This is your quick access toolbar. And you can click the little drop down arrow and you can customize where you want this toolbar to be. So I like to have mine under the ribbon, but you could choose to show this above the ribbon, which kind of puts it up here out of the way in the title bar. Now, I don't have mine up there because I always forget it's there if I don't have it below the ribbon. And the purpose of this quick access toolbar is really to allow you to access commands that you use frequently, quickly. So instead of hunting through ribbons looking for specific commands, you can add whatever you like to this quick access toolbar. If I go to the Insert tab, maybe I want to add recommended charts to my quick access toolbar. I can right click and choose Add to Quick Access. And you can see this icon just here is now recommended charts. And this is going to stay here until I choose to right click and remove it from that quick access toolbar. So you can really go through and you can add whatever you like simply by right clicking and adding to the quick access toolbar. Now, another thing that you can do with this is you can click the drop down, and if we jump into more commands, this is going to jump us across to our Excel options and into the quick access toolbar area. And if you take a look over on the right hand side, you can see all of the commands that I currently have on the quick access toolbar. Now from here, I can do things like rearrange the order. So maybe I want print titles a bit further up. I can use my arrows at the side to really rearrange where I want these to be. I can just click up and down. I can also add things like separators to give that quick access toolbar a little bit more structure and organization. So on the left-hand side, this is where we can choose what commands we want to add to our quick access toolbar. So you can do it from here as well. If I was to choose all commands, wait a few seconds, every single command available in Excel is now listed in this big long list. Remember, not every command that's available is actually on a ribbon. So if you can't find the command that you want to add, maybe 3D map, you could select it from here, click on the Add button to add it to the Quick Access toolbar. And at the top of every single list, we have this separator item just here. So if I add two separators, I can then use these and move them into position to add a little bit of structure to my Quick Access toolbar. I can basically position them wherever I like. And then when I click on OK, if you take a look at my Quick Access toolbar now, you can see these faint lines there just separating different groups of commands. So maybe you want to separate out commands that are related to give that Quick Access toolbar a little bit more structure. So I highly recommend that you customize that QAT, as we call it, with all of the commands that you use frequently so you're not hunting through the ribbons looking for what you need. Let's talk about fill series, because again, this is something which I find myself doing pretty frequently. And before I knew how to do this, it was a very tedious task. So for example, if we take a look in this first little table, I've basically got some dates in here. And if I press Control down arrow to jump all the way to the bottom of this list, you can see it runs to the end of 2023. So 31st of December, 2023. So I've got my dates here. I've extracted the day, the month, and the year. But the main point of this exercise is maybe I just want to number 1 to 365. And this might be anything that you want to number. It doesn't necessarily have to be days of the year. Anytime you want to number things in your Excel spreadsheet, there is a slow way to do this, and there is a quick way to do this. So you could go 1, 2, 3, you could do that. That's going to take you forever if you want to do 365 days. Another way that you could do this is you could type in 1, 2, then you could select both of them and then use the fill handle and start dragging down. But this is still a pretty slow method if I want to go all the way down to 365. So there is a better way of doing this. All you need to do is type number 1. And then if you hold down, when we have this little fill handle just here, hold down the right mouse button, not the left. Hold down the right, drag down 1, drag up, and you get this little secret menu. What we can then do is go to Series, and we can say we want to fill down the column. I want it to step up 1 each time, and I want it to stop at 365. And when you click on OK, it's automatically going to fill in all of those numbers for you. So a really cool little trick. Once again, I know a lot of people get confused by that. You hold down the right, you drag down, you drag back up, and then it shows you that menu. Now, another way that you can do this, and this is for people who have Excel for Microsoft 365, there is a function called Sequence that you can also use to number items in your list. So let me just quickly show you that. We can use Sequence to do exactly the same thing. So if we type in equals sequence, what we can do here is we can tell Excel how many rows we want. So I want 365 rows. How many columns? Well, I only want a column. What number do I want to start at? I want to start at number 1. And what number, or what is the step value? So I want it to go up by 1 each time. So we just need a 1 there as well. Close the bracket, hit enter, and that's going to do exactly the same thing, but we're using a formula. A few different methods there when it comes to numbering things really quickly. Really helpful if you have to number 100,000 rows. Now, another thing that we can use fill series for, if we take a look at the second example where I have this little table, I've got 3 names at the top, Claire, Mark, and Taylor. And maybe I'm trying to put together a little table that shows when these people work. So what I want down in this column are only the working days. So I don't want it to include any day that is Saturday or Sunday, because these people don't work on those days. Well, this is where we can use fill series again. What I'm going to do first, so I'm just going to take this first date just here and I'm just going to copy it down like so. Now this is going to just show consecutive dates. It's not going to exclude the weekend dates. But notice that as soon as I copy this down, right at the bottom, I get this little tag just here, some autofill options. And if I click it, I then get a choice of what I want to fill these dates with. So I don't have to fill them consecutively. I can choose to fill just the weekdays or just the months or just the years. So I'm going to say fill weekdays. It's going to adjust those and it's going to exclude include any dates that fall on a Saturday or Sunday. So if you take a look just here, you can see we jump from the 6th of January to the 9th of January. So I'm going to assume that the days in between, the 7th and 8th, are the Saturday and the Sunday. So don't forget about this little autofill options at the bottom. It's really great if you need to fill dates and other things in different ways to just sequentially. So now I have that, what I might want to do here is add some little checkboxes in, so I can just add a little checkbox whenever these people are working. And again, this is another little tip that I find people don't realize is there, but can be useful in so many different scenarios. I love to have things like checklists in Excel, whether it's a to-do list that I'm creating or something along those lines. So let me show you how you can add really useful little checkboxes in here too. Now you find checkboxes on the developer ribbon. Now, one thing you have to remember is that the developer ribbon isn't displayed by default in Excel. You have to turn it on. So if you're looking at your Excel currently and thinking, I don't have the developer ribbon, all you need to do is go to File and open up Options. And if we go to Customize Ribbon, on the right-hand side, just make sure that where we have the developer ribbon just here, you have a check in this box. If you can't see it, it's going to be just because this is deselected. So check it off, click on OK, and then you should be able to see this ribbon. So now if I want to add a little checkbox to denote when these people were working into every single one of these cells, I can simply go to the controls group and I can insert this checkbox form control. I'm just going to click and I can then position it wherever I like. And this can be a little bit tricky. Now, I don't want it to say checkbox. I want it to say nothing. So I'm just going to delete out that text. And once I have one checkbox in here, I'd probably take some time to position this more in the center, but just for time's sake, I can simply use autofill to drag it down and I can drag it across. And I've created myself a whole bunch of checkboxes and I can now say, okay, these people are working on these days. As I said, I use these checkboxes a lot for things like to-do lists. So a couple of little tricks and tips in there when it comes to filling dates and numbers down and also using form controls. I'm going to use Excel to create folders in File Explorer. How might this scenario come up? Well, it might be that you have a list of clients in a spreadsheet and you're doing lots of work for those clients and you want to create a folder in File Explorer that's the client's name, and you want to be able to save all of your work for individual clients into File Explorer. If you already have your clients listed out in an Excel spreadsheet, you can simply use them to create the folders automatically. Let me show you what I mean. I have a small list of clients just here. What I could do is I could simply add onto the front of here MD. I'm going to drag this down and then I'm going to copy the MD and the name of the folder, Control C, and we're going to paste them into Notepad. So I already have Notepad open just here. Control V to paste, and then all we need to do is save this into the folder where we want to create these folders. So I'm going to save these into the clients folder just here. So navigate to the folder where you want these folders to be created, and then you just need to make sure that you save your Notepad file with a .bat file extension. So when we click on save, all we then need to do is run that batch file, and it's going to create all of those folders like magic. Now, we can also use this to create subfolders as well. We can use the same method. If I wanted to create subfolders as well, I would just need to add into here / and then whatever the subfolder's name wants to be. So I might have documents here, I might have / images, and I can have more than one, maybe something like that. So you could create the structure. Again, you would just copy and paste into a Notepad file, save it as a .bat file extension, and then run it, and it will create all of the folders and the subfolders for you. So a really cool little tip, if you have to create lots of folders in one go, you can use Excel to help you with that. Another quick little tip, I'm going to jump back to this AutoFit worksheet just here for this one, because I want to show you something. Again, this is really simple, but I'm always surprised as to how many people don't realize this is how you do this. Inserting multiple columns or rows into your spreadsheet. Now, if you're somebody who, if they need to insert new columns, kind of selects one, right click, insert, insert, That's very slow. Maybe you're somebody who uses a keyboard shortcut, so we can say Control Shift plus to insert new columns. Both of those methods are valid. But what if I want to insert more than one column at a time? Maybe I want to insert 3 columns in one go. Well, all you need to do is select 3 columns in your data set, and then you can press Control Shift plus, and you're going to get 3 columns. However many columns you want to insert, just make sure you select that number first of all. And it works the same with rows. So if I want to select a whole bunch of rows, instead of doing it manually and individually, I can just select them all, Control Shift plus, and I'm going to get that number of new blank rows. A little tip that I find really useful that I find a lot of people don't actually know. Now, the quick analysis tool is something which you may or may not have noticed when you're selecting data. For example, I've got a little data set just here that has some company names. We have the budget for those companies, and then we have the actuals for those companies. Now, maybe I need to create a chart or some kind of table out of this data. Now, what I can do is I can select the data. Now, notice as soon as I do that, I get this little quick analysis tool at the bottom. Now, if we click this, we get a whole host of different things that we can do with this data. So I could very quickly apply some data bars. I could apply a color scale or an icon set. I could go to the charts tab and I could very quickly create a clustered column chart or a stacked bar chart, something like that. Or I could add totals. Lots of different things we can do with this quick analysis. So if I select clustered column, I very quickly have a column representing that data. So it just means I haven't had to waste time going up to insert, then selecting my chart. I can just use that quick analysis button. Also notice there is a keyboard shortcut for that button. If we hover over it, we can see it of Control Q. That will quickly pull that up. Now, another little thing here, I'm just going to remove one of these columns. So let's get rid of the budget. I'm just going to delete that out. Because another thing that I use this all the time for is if I select my data again and click on Quick Analysis, in this totals area just here, this is a really quick way of just adding some average count, maybe a running total of your data, a percentage of the total, things like that. Now notice here we have sum and then we have sum over here. So what's the difference between these two? Well, notice if I hover over sum, it's going to sum downwards. So it's going to sum all of the actuals and put the total at the bottom, which in this scenario, that is what I would want. If I was to choose sum over here, it's going to sum it so that my sum results are in that right-hand column. You can see we have a little yellow bar indicating it's going to put those results to the right. So this is useful in some situations. So for example, if I wanted to create a running total, I don't want my running total to show at the bottom there. If I scroll across, if I choose running total here, that's the one that's going to be most appropriate because it's going to give me a running total of my data and it's going to put it to the side as opposed to underneath. Again, something that I use all the time. Another one that I use fairly often is if we go back into totals and scroll across, percentage of total is another really useful one. So this is showing me that if I look at this data, company C has 65% of the total sales effectively. So a really quick way of analyzing your data sets. And this really comes into its own when you have a much larger data set than what I have here. Don't forget about that little quick analysis tool that you can access from that little icon. Now, maybe I need to put a blank line in between each of these. Now, sometimes you might have to do something like this. Your boss might want something with a blank line in between each entry in a list. Now, how can we do that quickly without having to do it manually like I've just been doing there? Right click, insert, so on and so forth. Well, let's undo because this is a cool little trick. What I'm going to do is if I do want to insert a blank line in between each row of my data, I'm going to type 1 and 2. And because this is a small data set, I'm just going to select them both and drag this down. So we now have numbers here. I'm going to copy them, Control C, and I'm simply going to paste them underneath, Control V. Now what I'm going to do, and this is where the magic happens, is I'm going to make sure I'm clicked in this column. I'm going to go to Data and we're going to click on Sort. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort on the values in column E. We're going to sort them smallest to largest. So what that's going to do, it's going to put all the ones together, all the twos together, all the threes, so on and so forth. And effectively, what you get when we delete this column out is we get a blank row in between each item because of the way that we've sorted. If you wanted two blank rows, you would just need to copy the numbers one more time, depending on how many rows you want in between. So I thought that was a cool little hack because I have had to do this previously and it takes ages if you've got a very large data set. So a nice little hack just there. Now, moving across, just a couple of things when it comes to cleaning up data sets, because again, this is something that so many people have to do. A lot of the time now, we're working with larger and larger data sets. There's very much an emphasis on analyzing data. Everybody's analyzing data. We're putting our data into charts and pivot tables. We're creating dashboards. And none of that is any good if you start out with a data set that isn't clean. And what we mean by clean is we mean that we've removed things like blank rows. We've removed things like duplicate values. We've made sure that all of our data is consistent, so the case is consistent. We have formatting applied, all of those types of things. So I'm just going to show you a couple of little tricks when it comes to tidying up data sets that I think are really useful. Now, this data set is very convoluted. I've just kind of messed it up a little bit just to show you how this works. Now, the first thing I would do here is I would use our column trick. So I would select all of the columns in my data set and I would double click to widen these out so I can actually see everything in my data set. Now, if I look at this data set, I have a few issues that I want to address in here. So I can see that I have some blank rows in my data set. And blank rows are never a good thing if you want to analyze data. So we really want to try and remove those. Now, a quick way of doing this is if we select, again, all of our columns where our data is contained. Now, we can press Control G and click on Special. Because what we can do from here is we can choose to select all blanks in our selection. So if we click on OK, it's going to find all of those blank rows. And then what we can simply do is we can go to our Home tab, now that we have them selected, and we can delete sheet rows. Like so. And like magic, they're all gone. So imagine how much quicker that is if you have a data set with 100,000 rows and you've got blank rows scattered throughout. Just select all of the rows, Control G, find the blanks, and then delete them all in one go. So a really good efficiency tip. Now, another thing that I might want to do in here is I might want to check for duplicates and remove any duplicates. Now, when I say a duplicate, I mean something that is an exact duplicate. Maybe I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to insert it. So now I have an exact copy of this row above. So that was what I would consider to be a duplicate in this data set. Because my data can have a duplicate region, we have lots of the same region in here, we have lots of the same country, but if every single column is the same, then that is a duplicate that I want to remove. Now, a quick way to remove duplicates, we can jump up to the Data tab, and we have a Remove Duplicates button. So in the Data Tools group, we have Remove Duplicates just here. I'm going to make sure that every single piece of data in my columns is a duplicate, and then I'm going to click on OK. It's found my duplicate and removed it. So another quick way to get rid of any duplicate values. If we take a look at column B, we have some inconsistencies going on here. So I can see that when I've imported this data set, and you will find if you do import data sets from external systems, they do come across quite messy and you will need to employ a lot of these techniques. Now I can see here I've got a few things going on. I've got everything in uppercase. I don't want it to be uppercase. I want it to match the rest of my data. I've got some weird spaces going on in some of these, which I want to remove. And also some of these have line breaks in them. So if we take a look here, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I've got a little line break in there. So I want to use text functions to quickly clean up this data. So what I'm going to do, and this is a really quick way of doing this, is I'm going to insert what I call a helper column. Control-Shift+ to insert a new column. Now, what we can do is combine 3 text functions and sort all of these issues out in one go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the case. Now, it's currently in uppercase. I want to change it to what we call proper case. I'm going to select my text and hit enter. And that's going to change it to proper. Now, if I was to copy this down, it's going to change everything to proper, but it's not going to resolve some of these other issues like this erroneous spacing that we have in there. So let's Control Z and go back. What I can do is I can edit the formula and I can use the trim function, and we just need to close off as many as we open. And that's going to get rid of those spaces. So you can see now that looks a lot neater. Now, if you want to get rid of things like line breaks or maybe non-printing characters that have crept into your data, we can also add clean onto the front here. And again, we just want to make sure we close that off. So I'm combining 3 functions together, which will essentially perform 3 cleaning exercises on my data, and we are done. So once we have this nice and clean, I then want to get rid of this column, column B. Now, if I was to right click and just delete this out, I'm going to get some reference errors because this data is using formulas that refer to column B. So another little trick that I use all the time is paste values. If we select column C, Control C to copy, I'm going to go to home and I'm going to choose to paste the values only, because what that will do is it will keep what you can see, but it's going to throw away these underlying formulas, and then you can safely delete out that dirty column and you have your nice clean column. So a few little tricks there that I like to use when I'm cleaning up data. If I wanted to represent these pass marks in a little in-cell chart, I could use something like data bars to do that. So again, notice I've got these selected. I can use my quick analysis tool at the bottom, and maybe I choose to use data bars to represent those values. Now, the thing with data bars is that it will put them in the same cell that you have the number. I can't put them over here, for example. So if I want to have basically this over here, I can use a slightly different method. So let's Control Z to undo. I want the pass mark in here, but I want the little in-cell chart over here. And I'm going to do this using the rept function, which you might not be aware of. The text that we want to output is going to be a pipe symbol. Now, bear with me on this. There is method to my madness. Now, remember, anytime you have text, you need to put it in quote marks. The number of times I want to repeat this pipe symbol is going to be based on the pass mark in column C. Let's close the bracket and hit enter. And we get this very strange thing. If I copy this down, I'm kind of getting this bar. And for the first one, I'm going to have 50 of them. The next one, 75, so on and so forth. But check out what happens if we select all of these and change our font to Playbill. Look at that. It changes them to an in-cell chart. And the best thing about these is we can format them. We can change the color of these because they are just effectively fonts, and they're also dynamic. So if I was to change this to 30, it's going to update because it's a formula. So now I have my pass mark in one column and also my chart in the next column. So the rept function, really, really useful for doing that type of thing. Another thing that I use all the time when it comes to in-cell charts is spark lines, and spark lines are amazing for representing trends in data. So if we take a look at the next table, we have a list of students, and then maybe we have tests that they took every single month of the year for last year. So these are the scores that they achieved in every test that they took each month. And I want to just have a little visual representation of the trend in this last column. Now, a quick way of doing this, we can just simply select all of the data, and then I can go to Insert. Let's go to N and take a look. We have a spark lines group in the middle there. Now, I want to insert a line spark line, which is SL. That's the keyboard shortcut. SL. There we go. Where is my location range? Where do I want these output to? So this is my location range. Let's click on OK and check it out. I get these little trend charts based on the data in my table. If I want to format these, I can. So maybe I want to add markers. So we get these little high points or little points marking every single month. And these are a really nice way of just visually representing data. They make your data just look a lot more interesting and a lot more engaging to look at. Now, did you know that if you right click on your status bar, you have a host of stuff that you can customize? And one thing I would always recommend that you do is that you have these turned on. So you have a tick next to average, count, numerical count, minimum, maximum, and sum. Because if you have these turned on, what it means is that if you want to quickly find out what the sum, what the average is of a set of a range of cells, you don't have to actually perform the calculation. So if I just select these sales values just here, check out my status bar at the bottom. I can see what the sum is, I can see what the max is, I can see what the average is, and I haven't had to do any formulas. So it's really useful if your boss just says to you, hey, what's the sales totals for the last quarter? You can select it and you can see it down there in the status bar. If you don't have those with a tick next to them, you're not going to see anything down there. So make sure that you do have these ticked. So if you take a look at this data set, you can see here I have a big old merged cell. So for sales rep 2, we don't have any data. So I've just got NA in here. Now, if I wanted to maybe do a total down here, where I wanted to add up all of the sales above, if I was trying to do a calculation, and then I want to select these cells, look what happens when we get to the merged cell. It doesn't let me select just that column of cells because we have a merged cell. So it makes it very difficult to do formulas. So when people merge cells, it always makes me cringe a little bit because there is a much better way to do this where you can get the same effect of a merged cell, but you can still do things like add things up because they're still effectively separate cells. So the first thing we're going to do here, let's just unmerge this cell and show you an alternative way. So in any situation where you might think about merging a cell, instead select all 3 cells. We're going to use a keyboard shortcut, Control 1, and we're going to jump across to alignment. And what we want to do in text alignment is we want to choose center across selection instead. So what that's going to do is it's going to give you the same look as if these are merged, but they're still 3 separate cells. So if I now wanted to do a sum calculation, I can simply select my data like that. Okay, so never merge cells in an Excel spreadsheet.
A big congratulations, everyone, for making it all the way to the end of this course. So it's just about time for me to sign off and say goodbye to you all. I hope you enjoyed running through this course as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you. Once again, my name is Deb. Bye for now.
Hi, from everyone at Simon Says It. We hope you're enjoying this training lesson. Please like this video to show your support for the channel. If you want to take your learning further, earn a certificate for this course, and gain access to over 200 courses ad-free, click up there and go to simonsaysit.com. Thanks for watching, and back to the course.
Any tips that we can garner from any experts as to how we can manage our mail better, freeing us up to do more of the things that are important, then the better. And we're fortunate that we have Outlook because Outlook has lots of utilities these days that can take all of the hard work out of it for us. So I'm just going to run through some of the tips that I find really useful when I'm working in Outlook. My name is Deborah Ashby and I'm a Microsoft trainer, and I've been supporting and training Microsoft products for about 25 years now. I'm just going to start out by talking to you a little bit about the golden rule. And this is kind of a rule that I like to adhere to when I'm managing my email. This might be something you already know how to do. I'm sure most people know how to create mail folders and subfolders. I'm going to share with you a couple of different techniques that I use when it comes to creating different mail folders and how I like to add them to favorites, things like that. I'm then going to show you how you can automatically move your mail to folders using different types of rules. So this kind of negates the need for you to spend a lot of time moving messages to different folders. You can get Outlook to do that all for you. We'll talk through using follow-up flags and categories. And I'm going to show you a couple of little tips and tricks, which I've called type less with shortcuts and drag and drop. We'll run through some of the best shortcuts in Outlook. And I'm also going to show you some cool things you can do with drag and drop that you might not know. I'm going to show you how you can insert text really quickly using something called quick parts, which you might not be aware of. And we'll also take a look at how you can schedule emails for delivery at a later date and also redirect your replies to other people. Something that I absolutely love, and that is search folders, which means you can run searches that you do all the time with just one click. I'm going to show you how you can apply conditional formatting to mails and also calendar items to make them really stand out. And I'll also show you how you can send mails as attachments, something that people do all the time, but not a lot of people sort of know how to do that. There's all different kinds of weird and wonderful techniques that people use. So we're going to take a look at that, and then I'm going to show you how you can use one of the automatic tools in Outlook to clean up your conversations. And then bonus tip at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the focused inbox. So that's basically what we're going to run through. Let's talk about the golden rule. Now, when I'm thinking about managing my emails, and this is something which you may or may not already do, I like to leave 5 to 10 minutes at the end of each day dedicated to organizing my mailbox, because what we're really aiming for is at the end of each day, when we go home, we want to try and aim for inbox 0 or as close as we can to it. And what I mean by that is that we've dealt with, or we've done something with all of the emails in our inbox. So everything is nice and organized when we come back into the office the next day. Now, there is sort of a golden rule that I like to adhere to when I'm going through checking my mailbox at the end of the day. And that is a rule I like to call deal, file, delete, or flag. So let's talk about deal first of all. Now, when you're going through your inbox, what you should really be doing is dealing with quick emails first. So if you've received an email from someone and it just has, you can just respond to it really quickly, it just needs a thanks or, something that's really, really simple, deal with those immediately, those things that don't take any time, and then either delete that email or file it in an appropriate folder. So deal with those quick items first. Delete spam and any emails that you don't need. Okay, so all of those newsletters and things like that, if you don't want to keep them, delete everything that you're not going to need. The next thing is file. So file emails that you've dealt with into relevant folders so that you can easily find them again. And it also, when you file them into folders, it gets them out of your inbox. And then the final thing here is flag. So use follow-up flags for emails that are going to require a longer, more thoughtful response. So if it isn't something that you can just reply to sort of within a couple of minutes, and it's going to maybe take a lot more time, then flag those and then schedule time in your calendar to actually respond to those. So if this is an email that's maybe going to take 10 minutes of typing and attaching documents, I might schedule or time block that out in my calendar so that I remember to do it. So really, when you go home in the evening, all of your emails should be either deleted, filed, or you might have some in there flagged for follow-up. Okay. And I like to stick to this rule of scheduling a few minutes at the end of the day to do exactly this. It makes you feel so good. And when you come in the morning, everything is nice and organized. We can create a set of folders underneath our inbox, and we can create subfolders of those folders. Now, a couple of different ways you can do that. If you're not sure, you can right click on your inbox and you have a new folder option just there, or you can jump up to the folder ribbon at the top and you have new folder just there. So I'm just going to create a few. As I said, I'm pretty sure you probably all already know how to do this. So let's just add in one for newsletters. I'm going to add that. We're going to add another one for clients, and we'll add another one for marketing. Now, underneath my clients folder, I'm going to create 3 subfolders. So once again, I'm going to right click, new folder, and it's going to give me a subfolder. This is for my client, Gramazon. We have Sam Sing, and another folder. This one is called Gaggle. And then I'm just going to add one more subfolder called Viva. Now, something that I like to do with these folders and subfolders, what you'll notice is that Outlook will automatically organize them into alphabetical order. Now, if you have a very specific order that you want those folders to be in, all I do is I add a number to the front of them. And I always do this in my Outlook account. I have all of my subfolders numbered effectively so that I can control the order they appear. So I might want to rename the Gramazon folder. Let's go to rename. And just add on the front of it a 1, something like that, which means it's going to be at the top of the list. And I can do exactly the same to reorder the rest of these. So I'm going to rename this one. We're just going to put 2, so on and so forth. So that is a good tip for controlling the order that your folders appear in your list. Now, when you are moving mail to your folders, again, this is something we should all be doing. It's a simple case of dragging and dropping. So we just need to click, drag, drop onto a folder. Again, most people probably know that, not rocket science. But what if you want to make a copy? Maybe you want to leave a copy of an email in your inbox, but you also want to copy it to a folder. Well, that is where you can hold down the control key, drag and drop to a folder, and it's going to leave it in the inbox, but it's also going to put a copy of it into your folder as well. Okay, so don't forget that you can copy as well as move your mails around. So a couple of tips there when it comes to folders. I recommend setting up folders for all your different clients or whatever it is that you want. Set them up, file your emails appropriately. Now, once we do have a set of folders, this is when we can start doing things like automatically moving mails to folders using rules. And this is something that I really like to do because it saves me a lot of hassle. It means that I'm not having to manually move mails to specific folders. I can get Outlook to just process them all for me. And we do this by setting up rules on our account. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a rule that moves all mails from Viva to the Viva folder. Okay, and you can see I've got a few emails in my inbox from Microsoft Viva just here. Let's click on File, and you'll see underneath here we have a button that says Manage Rules and Alerts. So let's click this and we can create ourselves a brand new rule. Now, there's lots of different rules that you can create. It doesn't necessarily have to be rules from a certain sender going to a certain folder. We can do all different kinds of things. So maybe I want to flag certain messages automatically for follow-up. Maybe I want to move messages with specific words in them to a folder. Maybe I want to move messages from a particular person to a folder. So what you choose here really determines, or really depends on what exactly it is that you want to do. So I'm going to say move messages from someone to a folder. Now, right at the bottom here, we have step 2. So this is where we can edit the rule or description. So it says apply this rule once this message has arrived from people or public group. So this is where we can go through and we can add in who the message is from. So when this message comes in from this specific sender, it's going to file it automatically to a folder. Now I'm just going to click in the from area and I'm going to do this from Viva Dash. It's just a junk email, no reply at Microsoft.com, and click on OK. And then I get to choose the folder I want to move these mails to. So I can click on the word specified. And then if I expand my inbox and expand clients, I want to move it to the Viva folder. Click on OK, click on Next. You can select more conditions if you want to. This is all I want it to do. So I'm just going to click Next again. And you can also add in things like exceptions as well, which I'm not going to do. We're just going to click on Finish. And there is my rule. If I click on OK, and in fact, I'm going to go back into, and I'm going to say run rules now, because if you set up this rule, it will run it on mail that comes in from this point forward. So if I wanted to run this on my inbox, like right now, to move all the messages from Viva into that folder, I can choose run rules now, which I am going to do. So let's select the rule, click on run now. And there we go. So now if I go back to my inbox, you can see that those messages that I had from Viva have now disappeared and they've been automatically filed into the Viva folder. So I highly recommend going through, taking a look at those rules and setting this up so that it automatically files emails for you. Another little thing I like to do with my folders down here, notice that we have this favorites area at the top just here. And I've got some default folders up here, but I would also recommend that any folders that you find yourself using all the time, so maybe I'm always using the Viva folder, I would add them up here to my favorites just so that they're easy to access. So you can simply right click and you have an add to favorites option just here, and that's going to put that folder at the top. Now, another thing that is super useful when you are trying to organize mail in your email account is using follow-up flags and categories. And if you remember at the beginning when I was talking about the golden rule, the last thing I said was flag emails for follow-up that are going to take a bit more of a thoughtful response, something that's going to take a little bit longer. And this is where you would use flags and or categories. A lot of people are familiar with flags, but there might be a few things that you don't realize about these flags as we go through. Now, the simplest way to flag an email is to click on it, and you can see here, I've got this little flag icon. Now, when you flag something, not only does it stand out in your email inbox because you've got this little flag and the email is going to turn yellow, but it also adds it into your to-do list. So another part of Outlook that you have access to is your task list, I should say. And if I hover over mine at the side here, you can see right at the bottom, it says your Trello account. That's the one that I just flagged. So it goes into your task list as an item that is for you to do. All right, which is really, really helpful. Now, another way that you can flag items other than clicking on the flag just there is you can go to the home ribbon and you have a little tags group just here. And underneath follow-up, this is where you can select what type of flag you want to add. When you just click on the flag icon that's on the message, it's just going to apply the default flag. Whereas here, you have a choice of other flags. So if I don't need to reply to this email until maybe next week, I could choose this flag just here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to follow this up next week, and I can add in if I want things like reminders. So maybe I want to add a reminder for this. It's going to follow it up in a week's time, and I can choose what time I want that reminder to pop up to remind me to respond to this message. So follow-up flags are really useful. I use them all the time. When you do have flagged items in your list, this is also useful when it comes to searching as well. So if you have a lot of sort of follow-up flags throughout your email list, you can just view all of the emails that are flagged for follow-up. And there are always a few different ways that you can do these things in Microsoft. But if you click up in the search bar at the top, notice you have this little search toolbar come up when your cursor is up here, and you have the option to just search for all flagged items. So if I click on this, it's just going to show me those 2 items that I've flagged. Okay, so really nice and straightforward. So I would highly recommend using flags and reminders. Another thing that you can do is you can use color to categorize or visually group your emails. And you can really do this however you want. Some people like to have time-based categories like today, tomorrow. Other people like to have categories related to their clients, things like that. So once again, if we go to the Home tab, and click on the tags drop down, this is where we're going to find our categorize option. Now, what you'll see by default in here is that all of the categories have default names. So just blue, green, orange, purple, so on and so forth. Now, those aren't particularly meaningful. We're probably going to want to rename all of those. So if we go to all categories, this is where we can choose a category and we can rename it. So maybe I want this one to be called, let's say, Project Alpha. Maybe I want the next one to be called Project Beta, so on and so forth. And of course, you can add new ones simply by clicking on the new button. You can add new color category and choose the color that you want assigned to it. You can even add shortcut keys to make it even quicker to assign these color categories to your different mails as well. So that's always a good option to use. So what I can do here is once I click on OK, I can then assign different categories to my emails. So I can right click, go to categorize, and then I can see my categories. So maybe this is Project Alpha. Notice that I get a little blue bar now where we have the email list. And when I open the actual mail, it's going to show me the full title. And of course, we can use these to visually categorize. So I can just simply look at my email list to know that everything that has a little blue icon is related to Project Alpha, which is very helpful to me. But I can also use categories to search as well. So very similar to follow-up flags. So once again, if we click up in the search bar, I can search by category. So if I want to see everything related to Project Alpha, it's going to pull just that one email back. All right, so think about those, think about using them. I use them all the time and I find them really useful. A lot of people love keyboard shortcuts, no matter what application you're working in Microsoft. And the good thing is that if you know keyboard shortcuts in other Microsoft applications, a lot of them translate directly across to Outlook. So some examples of that would be the common ones, things like Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, Control-A to select all. All of those still translate across. But of course, we do have specific ones which are just related to Outlook. So I just wanted to run through a few of these because I know a lot of people find it really efficient to work using keyboard shortcuts. So if you have a mail open in the reading pane like I do here and you want to reply to it, you can simply Control R and that's going to create a reply for you. If you want to create a brand new email, Control Shift M is going to pop open a new email for you. If you want to open your email, Control 1. Now, I have mine open in the reading pane already. If you have your reading pane turned off, then Control 1 will open the email. If you want to open your calendar, Control 2 is going to jump you across to your calendar. If you want to go to your contacts, Control 3 is going to jump you across to there. And if you want to open your tasks, Control 4 is going to jump you across to there. Okay, so a few really useful shortcuts. And something that most people don't realize here is if you press the Alt key on your keyboard, take a look at what happens on my ribbon. I now have letters assigned to each of the tabs that I have running across the top. And you can use these letters to navigate and find the command that you need simply by using the keyboard. So you don't really have to touch your mouse. So what I could do here is if I wanted to go open an option on the home ribbon, I could press the H key. And then it gives me an entire different set of keyboard shortcuts that are related to the items on the home ribbon. So if I wanted to create a new email, I could do N1, and that's going to open that up. Okay, so you can use these to navigate around. They can be really, really useful. But let's press the Alt key. I'm going to go to folder, so O, and then I'm going to create a new folder. So I need N just there. And I'm going to call this folder Fun Stuff and click on OK. All right, so don't forget about that special little Alt key to bring up those shortcuts. Now, something else which I also find people don't tend to know about is the ability to use drag and drop to help us create things like new contacts and calendar appointments from our email information. Let's try this one just here. What I could do is if I wanted to add Emil Johansson to my contacts, I can simply drag and drop this email onto the little people icon up here. So if I grab this email, drag and drop it onto people, it's going to open up a brand new contact card with a lot of the information already filled in. So it's got the full name in there. I might want to add some more details, but that is a lot quicker than having to switch across to people, creating a new contact card and adding in that information manually. So I really love the ability to drag and drop. Another thing we can do is if I take this same mail, I can drag and drop it over to my calendar. And that's going to basically open up a brand new appointment. If I want to turn this into a meeting, I can do that, but it's going to have all of the details of the mail in the body of the email. So again, really, really simple to do. So don't forget about those keyboard shortcuts and those drag and drop features. Really useful. Quick parts is something which I find that a lot of people sort of forget is there. It's available in Word and it's also available in Outlook. And what we use quick parts for is to quickly put text into an email. So if you find that you have maybe an email that you send out all the time where you find yourself typing the same thing over and over again, what you could do is save that text to quick parts, and then it's just a matter of one click and it's inserted into a new email. So let's take a look at how that works. Maybe I find myself sending out these 3 lines in emails fairly frequently, and I don't want to have to type them each time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to open the email before you do this, otherwise you don't get the option. You'll find it on the insert ribbon, quick parts just here. So if we click this, I'm going to say save selection to quick part gallery. So when we click on this, we then create a new building block. So I'm going to give this a name. It's saving it to my quick part gallery. Click on OK. And you can do this with much longer pieces of text. If you have paragraphs and paragraphs that you don't want to type out, you can save that. You can save images, you can save shapes, you can save everything into your quick parts if you want to. So now when it comes time to send another email using that same text, I can click on new email. And all I need to do is go to insert, quick parts, and there it is. And it's going to put it in for me. So that's going to save you a lot of time if you do find yourself composing the same email over and over again. maybe you have a bunch of emails that you need to send out on a specific day, maybe you need an email to go out just before a deadline or something like that, you can schedule when your emails are delivered. So for example, maybe you're going on holiday, but you need to send some time-sensitive emails whilst you are away. So instead of interrupting your holiday to send those emails manually, you can set them up before you leave, and then you can schedule the delivery. And those emails won't be delivered until the date and time that you've specified. And what you could even do if you didn't want to deal with all of the replies is you could redirect the replies to maybe your PA or your secretary or somebody else in your office. Most people always have somebody who's sort of picking up their work whilst they're away. You might want to redirect the replies to them so that they can deal with them. So how do we do that? Well, once again, I'm just going to grab a message that I have in drafts, and we will go for this one just here. Let's double click to open it. Now we're going to find these options underneath the Options tab. And you can see in here, we have delay delivery and direct replies too. Now, sometimes I like to work in the wider screen. So if I click this little diagonal arrow in the corner, that's just going to open up the properties window. So right at the bottom, we have our delivery options. So we can have replies sent to a specific person. So this is very simple. You just select it, and then you can add in the person that you want to direct all replies to. Now, currently I have these going to me, but I could go into my address book and I could direct them to Jack Wilkinson, for example. I might not select him because he's not a real person. Oh, there we go. I'm going to remove myself like that. And then you can set when you want these to be delivered, or when I want this message to be delivered. So do not deliver before. We can then choose a date. So maybe the 3rd of October, and we can go for, let's say, 2 p.m., something like that. So what happens is you must remember to click on send, but it's going to be held on the server until that date and time specified, and then it will be released and be sent to the recipient. Okay, so again, something that I recommend you do before you go away, set up your emails and set them to automatically deliver. Really useful little tip. And this is probably one of my favorite things, and that is search folders. Now, we have briefly looked at using the search in this session so far. So we've seen how we can search for all emails that we have flagged. We've seen how we can search for emails by their category. But every single time that I want to run a search, I need to click up here, and then I need to put in, my options. So I can go in, I can select from, keywords, subject, so on and so forth, if I want to search for emails that have attachments, and then I need to run that search. Now, what I would rather do is set this up as a search folder, because what I find is that there are always certain searches that I perform all the time. Maybe every single day, I like to search for all emails that have attachments. Instead of coming up to the search bar and filling out my options up here, I can set it up as a search folder, which means I can just click on it once and it's going to run that same search. So let's take a look at how this works. Now I'm going to close the search down, because you're going to find your search folders right at the bottom of your long folder list. So mine is right down here underneath RSS feeds. So if we right click on this, we can create a new search folder from here. So let's open it up. And now we can define what we want to search for. So if I wanted to, I could create a search folder that searches for all unread email, or email flagged for follow-up, or email from and to a specific person. Again, this really depends on exactly what you want to search for. One that I do quite like is searching for large emails. This is particularly useful if you're having a problem with your mailbox size. So I remember at companies I used to work at, they used to have quite a low mailbox size, and we were constantly filling up our mailboxes and being asked to delete out our largest mails. So you could set up a search folder that's going to show you all of your largest emails, and you can then choose to delete them or file them or whatever you need to do. So that's also quite good. Let's set up a couple of these. Now I'm going to do one that just searches for email flagged for follow-up. I'm going to click on OK. And that is it. Now I have for follow-up down here, and when I click on this search folder, it's going to run that search and just show me those search results. Let's right-click, do new search folder, and let's do another one. So maybe I want to have a search folder, email with attachments. Click on OK. And now I have another search folder, which is just going to show me all of those emails with attachments. And of course, you can right click and rename these as well. So if you don't like the default name that they've been given, you can definitely go in and rename them. And I just find this really useful. Instead of messing around with the search bar at the top, I just set up my most common searches as a search folder, and then I just have a one-click option to run that search. And you can set up as many of these as you like. So search folders are probably one of my favorite things in Outlook. It's also worth noting, before we leave that topic, if we right click again and go to new search folder, you can also create your own customized search folder. So if you want a search folder that does a more complex search than the items that you can see in here, you can create a customized search folder where you go in and you can choose exactly the criteria that you want. So you can run through and search for specific words in emails, search for who it's from, who it's sent to. And you've got even more choices in here. So you can really customize exactly what that search folder is looking for. Maybe I want emails from a specific person to stand out in my list of emails when they come in. So that might be your manager. Maybe you want an email to really stand out so that you can see it as soon as it comes in and it doesn't get lost in your inbox. We can create rules and things like that, but one really quick way of doing this is just to use conditional formatting to change the color of the email so that it really stands out. And you can use this same conditional formatting on your calendar items as well. So let's have a look at how both of these work. Now, to get to conditional formatting, you need to go up to the View tab, and in the current view group, so this first group just here, we have a View Settings button. Conditional formatting, add a new rule. I'm going to give this a name. Let's call it Viva Emails. And then we can define how we want the font to look. So if we click on font, let's go for something that stands out quite a bit without being too crazy. Let's go for that. Bernard MT. Why not? And I'm also going to change the color as well. So let's make this something that really stands out. Let's go for a red. So that's how the font is going to look. Let's click on OK, and then we can apply a condition. So we need to tell Outlook which emails we want to apply this formatting to. So if we select the condition, we can do things like search for words, or we can type in who the email is coming from as our condition. I'm going to say the word digest. Now, digest in subject field only. If you wanted it to search for a word in the body of the message, then you would select subject field and message body. I'm just going to search in the subject field only. So let's click on OK. That's my condition. Click on OK again. Click on OK again, and take a look at how that changes. So now every email where we have the word digest, that's my condition, in the title, it's applied that formatting. And those emails really stand out. So you could definitely do that for emails from your manager so that they stand out as well. So I really like conditional formatting. I really like to apply that to my emails. But again, entirely personal preference. Now, we can do a similar thing when it comes to our calendars as well. So if we just jump across very quickly to the calendar, most of the time when you add calendar items in, I mean, you can change the colors here, but you can also conditionally format them. And you do it in pretty much the same way. So if we go up to the View tab again, and go into View Settings, we have the same conditional formatting options. I'm going to add a rule, and I'm going to call this lunch meetings. And I can say, okay, where you find an appointment with lunch meetings in the title, I want you to color code it in red. Let's go for condition, and we're going to search for the word lunch meeting. And that's going to be in the subject field only. Click on OK, click on OK, click on OK. And like magic, it's going to turn all of those that color. And every new meeting that you add with the word lunch meeting in the title, it's going to color code it in that way. So I really like to use conditional formatting on my emails and also on my calendar items. Now, another thing which I find that people seem to forget that they can do is send an email in our inbox as an attachment. So what we can do here is if we open an email, mine are opening in the reading pane, over the side where we have reply, reply all and forward, if we click the three dots just here, we can forward as attachment. Now, why would you want to forward as attachment as opposed to just forwarding? Well, when you forward as an attachment, it makes that email basically an attachment of the email that you're currently typing. So it means that the person that you're sending this to can see the email in its original format and they know that it hasn't been modified in any way. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, I've been doing that for years. You would be surprised how many people don't realize that that option is sitting there in their Outlook, and it is a really, really useful option. Now, if you're having an email conversation with one or more people, particularly if you're having an email conversation with a lot of people, maybe everybody in your department, these conversations can have multiple people replying, and before you know it, your entire email inbox is going to be filled up with replies to these emails. I know a lot of the time when this has happened to me in the past, if the conversation isn't particularly something that I'm interested in, sometimes I've emailed the person who sent the original email and said, can you remove me from the recipients list because I don't need to receive these emails? Well, we have some options in Outlook that can really help us manage that whole process. So one of the options that we have is clean up conversation. Now, you're going to find these in the delete group just here. And I think it's the middle one. That's it just there. So we have three options: clean up conversation, clean up folder, and subfolders. Now, what exactly does this do? Well, if you can imagine, somebody sent an email to you and 10 other people. Those 10 people are all replying to these emails. And a lot of the time, the replies might be something that's kind of inconsequential to the actual email conversation. So it might just be a thanks or a will do or something like that. So you end up with an inbox full of emails which just have things like thanks, will do, speak to you soon in them. So what you can do is with this clean up conversation button, when you click it, it's going to take a look at that conversation. It's going to remove all of the emails that contain things in them just like thanks and will do, and only leave you with the email that contains the entire conversation. So it's going to get rid of all the stragglers and just leave you with the entire conversation. And you can apply this to one particular email, that would be the cleanup conversation option, or you can apply it to a whole folder in Outlook. So I could click on the Gramazon folder, I could say cleanup folder, and it's going to apply that to all emails in that folder. I could apply it to all my folders and subfolders as well. I'm going to go back to my inbox and we'll just do cleanup conversation. It's going to say all redundant messages in this conversation will be moved to the deleted items folder. So they don't get deleted permanently. If we clean something up, it's just going to move them across to deleted items. If you want to go back and review them, then you can definitely do that as well. But I really, really love that option. Now, another thing that we have in this same little vein, in this same group up here, is to ignore conversations. So this is a great one. I mentioned that example of sometimes I might say to the original sender of the email, can you take me off the recipients list because I don't need to know about this? Instead of doing that, you can now ignore the conversation. So what this will do is if you find that you've been copied in on an email that has nothing to do with you and you don't want to keep receiving the replies, instead of having to speak to somebody about it, you can simply click ignore conversation and it's going to move that message and all future replies into the deleted items folder. So that is also another really great option to utilize. So those are two of the options that I like when it comes to cleaning up your folders. And this is something which you may like or something which you really, really hate. It's a bit like Marmite, this one. People either love it or hate it. In my inbox, I basically have two little inboxes here. I have focused and then I have other. Now, the focused inbox basically uses AI to scan your emails as they come in and determine if those are important emails or if those are junk emails. So things like newsletters, spam, stuff like that. And it will automatically sort your emails into these two different folders. So you should find all of your real emails, your important emails will come into focused, and all of the spammy type stuff will come into other. Now, some people love this. They love having Microsoft sort out their emails for them. Other people really hate it and just prefer to have everything in a big, long inbox. So you might be in one group or the other. If you want to turn this option off or on, depending on if you have it on currently or not, you're going to find it on the View tab, and it's this option just here. So mine's currently turned on. If I click to turn it off, it just goes back to all and unread at the top here. So just remember that your focused inbox is there to help you separate your important emails from all of the junk.
A big congratulations, everyone, for making it all the way to the end of this course. So it's just about time for me to sign off and say goodbye to you all. I hope you enjoyed running through this course as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you. Once again, my name is Deb. Bye for now.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.